Well, hey there. Chaz isn't going to be able to be on this week, but we're going to go over some current events. Before we get there, though, I do want to go over a couple of things to remind people of where this economy that we have sort of came from, because it's really interesting to note. And some of the jobs we have today aren't necessarily value added. That's the easiest way to put that. Because after World War II, they were scared of another recession, and they created up a lot of middle management jobs, especially with people going to college after the war that needed jobs. Some of those were good, real jobs, and some of them were middle management jobs that weren't really needed before, but they needed jobs for those people. A lot of that ended up being in government service, and you go down the list with that, with the baby boom population. But as those baby boomers got older, we didn't necessarily need all those jobs and the system that we had built up. So, first off, we're going to look at a PBS video about the past, and then we'll come on back. And after we come back, then we'll go over today's news.
In 1941, the United States was still recovering from the Great Depression. The jobless rate had been as high as 25%. Bankruptcy was not uncommon, and the standard of living for most Americans was 60% lower than before the stock market crash of 1929. When the war started, all that changed. More people were needed to produce the food and weapons for the men on the front lines. The new jobs were taken by many who had been out of work for several years. As more men were sent away to fight, women were hired to take over their positions on the assembly lines. Before World War II, women had generally been discouraged from working outside the home. Now they were being encouraged to take over jobs that had been traditionally considered men's work. Existing companies changed their lines from consumer goods to war materials, and new plants were constructed strictly for the creation of products for the war effort. In Ankeny, the Des Moines Ordnance Plant was already under construction when war was declared. By 1942, 30 and 50 caliber machine gun ammunition began to roll off the line. Gene Ersland of Ankeny, formerly Gene Gibson, was among the 19,000 people who worked at the facility.
I think they gave us a short indoctrination as to what we were there for. And then they took us right to the working area. And I stayed in that same working area all the time that I was there. I think the patriotism came as it progressed, and I was thinking of going on into the service.
Okay, so just as a note to that, with that overproduction that continued on after the war surplus was sold off. So a lot of the companies got rich off the war surplus. The other thing is the containerization started along with the mass production. They shifted over to domestic goods. We had all this stuff that we made, and not enough people to consume it. So how do you get people to consume it? And that's through globalization. And that's exactly what they did. McLean was a big part of that with the deep water ports, with the containerization, and each military dealio that we've been in since then has been sort of a part. Like each time we go in somewhere, we usually end up with a deep water port, military contractors afterwards, and them end up buying our goods or us moving our factories there to make things cheaper. And so we have to look at that as well. It wasn't a scale economy, right? Because overall, if you aren't scaling your economy, meaning that like you're able to have consumers for the stuff you're producing and you're not overproducing and stuff like that, it's key, because your nations, if you're able to source things locally, you're independent. If you're relying on others, you're while relying on others, right? If that supply chain stops for any reason, then you're sort of screwed, and vice versa. Not only that is if you are overproducing to the point where people can't buy it and you have to, lower the prices, whatever else, it also screws out other local economy because they're not able to produce things either. And we've sacrificed quality for quantity. And we also made up, again, industries that didn't exist before just for the sake of them existing. You can go back through the different archives and see also where they made up a bunch of service jobs that didn't exist before, right? So that's after people earn money, they're paying for different services like going out to eat or whatever else. But without those original people getting that money, you're not going to have customers. So it does create up a little bit of a circular economy, but the problem is the value added. The product is the value, not necessarily the restaurant. Does that make sense? Like the burger is the value, which you can make at home as well. Not the restaurant. And it sounds bad to say it like that, but we did do that. And we've gone over before the history of like the shopping malls and that. I was a guy out of Minnesota, and that was one of the videos we did from the first One Minnesota video in this series. Today, right now is news. At 6 o'clock, we'll be going over the One Minnesota stuff for the third episode. But back on the first episode, we did go over that. And the thing of it is, though, is that mall economy basically took over the United States, and that consumerism. The problem becoming, though, if you don't have enough people, right, paying in and producing, then you end up having a problem on the other side of it. Because they realized that the baby boom ended in the late 60s, right? So by the 70s, the population was already, the birth rates were starting to go down, and they recognized that. They also recognized the need for these people to have jobs and whatever else. And they put a lot of policies in place for the baby boomers as they got older. What they failed to do, though, is look at that 18 to 24 year age range, which was declining, and the natural birth rate wasn't keeping up. At least in Minnesota, since the 70s. And what they decided to do was sort of import people. Okay. And it happened throughout the nation too. Because then you're filling those low income jobs with other people, makes it cheaper. And then it allows people to do other things and make more money over there and then have that money to spend. And that's what we've decided to do. So that just brings us to where we're at with the economy. And I'll get to a little bit more of that portion of it in just a minute. We're going to go over some news from Minnesota next, and that is about the recalls. So I'm going to go ahead and share a different screen. There we go. And that'll be of the GOP recalls in Minnesota. And then we're going to talk a little bit about that.
At the Capitol tonight, there's a growing effort to recall every DFLer in the Minnesota House. And the push by Republicans now has the support of the state party chair. Callan Gray is here with why they want them gone and what it would actually take for it to happen. Callan?
Kevin, the Minnesota Republican Party says it's holding DFL lawmakers accountable for their boycott, arguing it cost taxpayers thousands of dollars. The DFL is firing back, calling the recall petitions frivolous.
There is no quorum.
A DFL boycott that started the first day of the session in mid-January and lasted until a power-sharing agreement was reached last week is now the focus of a Republican-led effort to recall all 66 DFL House members.
When they don't show up for work and they're playing a game, there are got to be consequences for that.
DFL.
I'll pause that there for 1 second. So yeah, we had half of our House members not show up. 66 members didn't show up. And so that's what this is all about. And they're doing a recall effort. The DFL says it's frivolous, but there is some key things that have happened on the record in the House. So we'll get to the House journals in just a minute here. And I wanted to just mention that before we move on with this.
Members said they stayed away from the House chambers to prevent a quorum, calling for Republicans to share leadership, with the House expected to be tied 67-67 after an upcoming special election.
Normally, you fire those people in the civilian world.
The new chair for the Minnesota Republican Party, Alex Plekish, says the recall petitions started as a grassroots effort. He's now endorsing.
It's groundbreaking. It's never been done before. But we're making a statement.
So far, petitions have been filed against former Speaker Melissa Hortman and 8 other representatives. Secretary of State Steve Simon's office confirms it reviewed and forwarded to the courts 6 of the petitions. It's still reviewing the other 3.
That's a good first step.
Plekish says they have the 25 signatures needed to file petitions in at least 40 other districts and plan to do so in the coming days. If the Secretary of State's office confirms the validity and the Supreme Court then finds grounds for recall are met, more signatures have to be gathered before the governor sets an election date.
We may not go to recall for all 66 at the very end. We may focus on just a few, but we're going to call them to task all the way to the end.
A DFL spokesperson responding, quote, Republicans have filed frivolous recall petitions before that have been dismissed, and we are confident these frivolous recall petitions will be dismissed as well. Democrats have been doing our jobs fully every single day, and there is no basis for a recall.
The Republican Party chair expects this could be a 10-month process from start to finish, and it will be expensive. Now, separately, there has also been a recall petition filed against Republican Representative Quam for conducting business during the period of no quorum. The Secretary of State's office confirms it has verified its validity and sent that to the courts as well. Kevin.
Okay, Callan Gray reporting.
Hey there. No need to adjust your TV or more like.
Okay, we're going to go ahead and stop sharing that tab and switch over to a different tab real quick. Okay, so this right here is a Journal of the House. So this is the Journal of the House of Representatives. And there are some key things here. Okay, we're going to go ahead and go to their first day. Their first day was on January 14th, okay? And Steve Simon called it to orders, right? The members-elect assembled in the chamber. The problem is 66 of those members-elect did not. Okay, at noon, Steve Simon called the members-elect and appointed a clerk. There was a prayer, right? Pledge of allegiance, and then they called the roll. Okay. Of the roll, there was a whole bunch of people not there. The only people that were there were the Republicans. Okay. But these are the only people that presented their certificates, because it says as their roll was called, they presented their proof of eligibility to be sworn in. Okay, these are the only people that presented proof of eligibility. But yet there was 133 certificates. Who presented the other 66 certificates? Nobody knows. Okay, it's not in the journal. It's not in the House Journal. Okay, so then how are they able to be sworn in if they haven't provided the proof of eligibility? Okay, they were sworn and seated as members of the House of Representatives. And if you scroll down here, okay, and they took the oath of office. It mentions the oath of office for things that happened prior to this day, prior to the session. But they didn't have a quorum. There was no business they were able to be conducted because they didn't have a quorum. And same thing with the 66 members, right? They didn't have enough people to conduct business, but they did. So they took the oath of office, and it doesn't say anything about their certificates being presented. So they haven't presented their certificates. It just the members elected an oath outside of the time prescribed by law and location prescribed by law. And they admit it, because up here it says, in accordance with the law, that's when they're supposed to meet at the seat of the legislator, which is St. Paul, right, at 12 o'clock on noon on the first Tuesday after the second Monday. And that's all it's in the statutes. Okay. But down here it says the members present took their seats. So these members that weren't take their seats, these are the members that took their seats. And then he decided there wasn't a quorum. Well, there's an issue with that because if you go over to here, the data the DFL finally came back, it just said that they did a roll call, right? And members were present, a quorum was present. And then they move right into the election of speakers. They didn't seat the members. They didn't seat 66 members. So I don't know how the DFL petition can go through if you're doing a recall petition for somebody having followed the law as prescribed when the 66 members did not. They did not follow the law, and it's as simple as that. And I'm going to, 1 second here, I'm going to share this tab instead. Right here is the articles that show you. Oh, is it going to pop up or no? Oh, here we go. Okay. So this one right here. Right in here. This is right out of the Minnesota statutes. Okay. 3.0 for this organization. So let's go first down to the Constitution, right? It tells you when they should meet, where they should meet. So it says, as prescribed by law, here's a law that it talks about, okay, at noon on the day, whatever, that they shall meet and all that. And I've gone over this before, right? And it says that each person claiming to be members has to present their certificate to be filed. Okay, they failed to do it. You have to have the certificates so presented, then stand and be sworn. You can't do it outside of that. Okay, evidence of membership. They have to have it duly executed by who? The Secretary of State. How do they do that? By showing up and doing it, which they failed to do. So they're not even seated. So no clue where they're going to go with that, because there's not really too many places to go with that. And here's some breaking news from Dusty. So he said that so far all their petitions that have been filed have been forwarded on. This one is for Hortman, but he has a list of them. And please give him a follow, okay? He has some good breaking news coming out on the stuff. So I don't have a horse in the race. I don't think either side did it right, because the GOP could have argued better because their seats still aren't filled. They haven't been seated. And 22 days after they were seated is when they can go ahead and call an election while they haven't been seated properly. It's all semantics, but yeah, I think it is key, you know. Okie dokie. I'm going to, where'd that go? I'm sorry. I'm going to real quick find where I put that Star Trib article. Okay, we're going to share this tab instead. So right here, Minnesota is facing more than 20,000 federal workers. Has more than 20,000 federal workers that fear for their jobs. So who knows how many of those that Trump's going to cut? But Minnesota has other things to worry about too, because there's a lot of funding for the colleges and that's been coming through the feds, even though they have buku endowments. And COVID was actually help created from the lab up here, from stuff they sent to Wuhan. I can pull up the U.S. Right to Know stuff on that. But yeah, so they did the equal health funding and stuff like that. And it is what it is with that. But yeah, they've been doing gain of function and stuff like that. So here's the tab on that. Okay. This is from U.S. Right to Know. And if you scroll down, they have a guy in here by the name of Fang Li. Sorry, it's a ways down here. Fang Lee right here. Okay, and if you go ahead and open it, hopefully it will. He's from the University of Minnesota, okay? And so there's programs like this that the U of M does do. So they're going to be losing out on the funding for this stuff. And so you have a lot of people like Fang Lee that are probably going to be out of a job. So, yep, this is the emails. And you can go through here. He ends up sending some redacted samples to Wuhan. See right here, samples that were furnished. Okay. Right here, they're sending the samples, right? And as Dr. Barrick was involved with it, is a student from Fang Lee's lab. So yeah, the U of M was involved with it, guys. I'm not like a conspiracy theorist. I do read stuff though. Yeah, I am a conspiracy theorist, I ain't gonna lie. But it's just interesting, you know. So there's another thing I want to show you guys about just our regular economy up here in Minnesota. This is Minnesota specific. You can look this stuff up for your own state. But our layoffs are trending higher already. Okay. So there's more than 100 employees. You have a couple different plants that are going down. I forget all of them. Most of them were in Eden Prairie that I saw. There was a controls manufacturer, Danfoss, I think it was. Honeywell's breaking up one of their places a little bit. And that's a different place. But yeah, there's quite a few different layoffs happening up here. And then you have to add in the effect of the migrants with the possibility of ICE detentions and them being moved out. So there's a lot of tax revenue, that's all I'm getting at, that might be going away in Minnesota. So the legislator should probably keep that in mind, because if your tax base is shrinking, well, you know, what are we going to do? That and a lot of the economy up here has been based around nonprofits and that grift, along with the gender ideology stuff. And so if that goes away, that market goes away. And some of these people were making quite a bit of money. So I'm going to go ahead and try to find on X here real quick. There was an organization that somebody had posted about that I had commented on. That is a nonprofit. And it was one that got a grant. Nathan Hansen had posted. It's taken me a second to scroll through this. I'm going to share this tab. They tripled their money. It was so it's a nonprofit that had gotten contracts this day. They wanted $15 million to here. I'll just see if I can search Nathan Hansen, and we'll go from there on that. I guess it wants to lag. Sorry, bad internet today, guys. But there's a, I think Chaz commented on it too. There's a senator that ends up being on their board. Actually, yeah, I'll look up Chaz real quick here. Here we go. And if you have prayers for him, please send some. He ain't feeling the best today, which is why he's not here. So definitely pray for him if you got prayers. So I'm trying to find it. Oh yeah, so one of the other news articles is that there was some stuff between one of the violence interrupters up here in the city hall where they were like supposedly making threats at each other. And they can take that here or there. There was some stuff said that was street talk. And then you also had the pushback from the council. And what they're looking at doing is moving the violence interrupter funding over to the county because they've had problems where they weren't accounting for their stuff appropriately. And so since then, they've had a lawsuit. They got required to go ahead and comply with like basic accounting principles because they weren't applying with basic accounting principles. So after that lawsuit, they applied that, and some of the people that had it before didn't get it. And stuff like that. Well, the thing of it is, though, is some of these groups also had money directly appropriated from the state. And that's like a mother's love, all that jazz, which Little Sis shows that they are related. And hopefully I can get my editing capability on there. So that way I can add some stuff because there's actually more groups involved. Okay, yeah, here it is. Okay. So this right here is a $15 million appropriation to a nonprofit. But if you look through it, it's interesting. They tripled their value, their revenue from 22 to 23. They did end up purchasing a building, though, for $2 million that they previously did not have. They had been renting out spaces. And this is a group that has been around for a while and has been verified to do some decent work. Okay, still $15 million is way too much. But their director is Senator, or one of their directors is Senator Zainab Mohammed. And so that gets interesting. And also the owner's son is one of their contractors. So that just gets interesting. Well, we're going to go ahead and click on this. See if we can pull up the picture bigger. Yeah. So that right there, that's the DFL senator. So how the senators are getting stuff appropriated directly to their clients. Nobody knows. Well, Bobby Joe does because he's done that too. Because Bobby Joe was a lawyer for Al Flowers and all those guys. So, and give me 1 second here. I'm gonna pull up Little Sis, and you can see that grift. Okay, so this is another one that a session or two ago got money, right? And they had gotten appropriated they had a couple different bills. I'm not sure which all ones got passed, but it was up to $50 million they were looking at in appropriations. I know at least 3 mil got distributed through them. But it's interesting because Al Flowers is on their staff and they have relationships with New Salem and a Mother's Love Initiative. Okay. And if you go with Interlocks, okay, UCMT as well is affiliated. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and just go back to relationships and click on New Salem. So New Salem also runs 21 Days of Peace, which is now its own nonprofit that they just spun off last year. He also runs Salem Inc. and Salem LLC. Okay. He's also part of Minnesota's Safe Streets. And if you click on him, he's also part of Minnesota Heals 2.0. And Andy Luger had actually met with him prior to being sworn in as the Attorney General, or not Attorney General, U.S. Attorney for Minnesota District for the federal courts. So he was U.S. Attorney for the District of Minnesota. Before he got sworn in, he was actually meeting with these guys and helping, I guess, choose who gets the money, because that's exactly the way it worked. And that's interesting because he's not supposed to be doing that. But at least Hennepin County on my data request showed that, yeah, they weren't going to give me anything because there's an attorney-client privilege a month before he went ahead and got sworn in or was even confirmed. So the other one is a Mother's Love Initiative, and it's, all these people, and they hire their kids, right? And they also have a relationship with these guys, the Minnesota Office of Violence Prevention. And it shows who else gets it too. And so you might want to look into these guys too. Because when you actually look at the 990s, it gets very interesting. And speaking of 990s, the Metro Council up here, the Met Council, has some issues with theirs as well. And I will go ahead and show you that real quick. We're going to go to IRS 990 search. Oh, I'm sorry. It was not even showing you any of that. I was sharing my screen and it wasn't being seen on your end. Give me 1 second. I'm going to go ahead and hit back to that little sys stuff and then go from there. There we go. Okay. This is what I was showing you. So there's relationships, right? All that jazz. There's New Salem, Jerry. You go back. Much love. That's Office of Violence Prevention. So this is how you find all this stuff. And the stuff that's on here has been verified. They have to upload this stuff on this side to make sure that it's correct. So now we're going to go to the IRS 990s. And we're going to go ahead and search. Give me 1 second here. I invited somebody on and seeing if they want to go ahead and come on. Okay, so we're going to look at Metropolitan Council Management Association. So these are the guys that Met Council contracts with, okay, for the services of their employees, right? So basically they provide the human side of the Met Council, and we're to the tune of a lot of money, okay? And it's a nonprofit that is revoked, that only once filed anything, and they claim to not have gross receipts greater than $50,000. The contracts with the Metropolitan Council would claim to be different than that. So, like, how are they still, like, are they operating as a nonprofit? Because if you take this name right here, right, and then we're going to go over real quick to the Minnesota Secretary of State website. So, and we're going to go to the business search function. So right here. And we're going to go to the business search function. So there's quite a few people that have hopped in on the open Tina Smith senator seat, which we'll get to here in a minute too. Somebody that was looking at possibly joining that pool of candidates, we'll have to have on a different time. So it was the last minute that I let them know. But and any of the candidates that want to come on, we can host a debate, or you can come on here and just chat. I don't have a problem with it because I'm just trying to get information out to people. But yeah, it's the Management Association. It's a nonprofit, right? So then why the heck don't they actually like submit anything, right? Like they just don't to the IRS here. So you might want to look into that, people. Okie dokie, we're going to go ahead and I'm going to come back up and I'm going to throw my hat back on. It's because I want to. This I got a discount a couple years back at Fleet Farm, and it's a cat, Blaze Orange hat, which is hard to find. I got one also for my buddy who does snow plowing in that. This is a sparkling water. But he ended up loving it because he's a equipment operator. But I guess they're really hard to find. Anyway, another news. Senator Tina Smith is stepping down in 2026. And there is some rumors that how it's going to play out, because some people are saying that Walz really wants the spot. And Peggy Flanagan has already sort of put her hat in the ring for it. And so the question, and Peggy Flanagan is our lieutenant governor up here. So Walz is a really interesting fellow. And if he really wants it, one of the things I could see happening is him deciding to step down. Lieutenant Governor Flanagan becomes governor. So then she gets to run as incumbent and then points Walz to the Senate seat. All right. If Tina Smith goes ahead and steps down before 2026, where it gets an appointed in there. Because if they run on where it's just an open, where they have the primary people, there's going to be issues because the DFL up here, everybody wants that seat. They're talking about Hortman. They're talking about Ilhan Omar. That everybody wants that seat, right? Angie Craig. And so, yeah, that brings up some questions, is who's going to fill that. On the Republican side, they have quite a few people as well. But the Republicans in Minnesota for the statewide races, they really love to talk a big game. And then end up going off into left field where they totally lose people. And at the state level, that's sort of what they're doing too. And I'm not saying that in a bad way, man. Like I'm an independent. Okay, like I'll agree with the left on some stuff. I'll agree with the right on some stuff. If it's against the Constitution, sort of F off. Okay. One of the bills that the GOP put through that they were trying to get done when there was no quorum was a bill for getting rid of any penalties for the Brady violations and the Giglio violations and stuff like that. No, there's laws. We shouldn't be doing that, you know. And they have their own special projects they put money towards, you know, a little bit of money towards this group or that group that supports you. And just like the left does, it's the left does it more. So we got to get rid of that stuff. Anyway, the GOP, I think, is going to go a little bit too far, you know, or not enough, either way. As far as overall what's happening in the country, though, under Trump, people are a little bit out of the blue trying to figure it out. Well, you got to realize that the left had set up this entire surveillance racket, right, with the COVID and that. They were putting us all into databases, and Tim Walz was pushing it really hard on, at least in Minnesota, where we were all in the GIS database, and he's talked about it. It's ESIRI, ESIRI. Those are the database he was using. He's the ArcGIS, your county mapping, stuff like that. That's what he was using to gather as much data, and people, they were trying to gather everybody's data in there to try to figure out the spread, and also if you could go outside and whatnot and all that jazz. Companies already get your data. There's some stores. I'm going to see if I can pull it up here real quick. The Kroger fluctuating prices. Because Kroger has this new deal where they're going to be dynamic pricing, right? And they've been doing it. I'll mute that. Sorry. I'm going to share that tab in a second here. But Kroger has been trying to use these displays that are basically changed based on your perceived credit score or whatever it's going to make it based on. Part of that is they calculate how much you're going to be willing to pay. They track you as you're around the stores. So like your RFID chip in your wallet, that little chip actually gets radio frequency ID tag. So it gives off information. Your phone gives off information. They can literally tell you exactly like how long you've been standing in front of what product, what you're more likely to buy, what price you're willing to pay for it based on your habits and everything else. That type of thing also then gets fed into some of these AI systems. Minnesota's been pushing AI governance for a while. Part of the fraud stuff up here, Governor Walz is saying he wants an AI system to help with that. The thing of it is, though, it all depends on what you feed into that AI. So if it's people like Walz, who's done a lot of fraud, that's feeding stuff into this AI will actually cover up their fraud, right? But the left side of it was trying to get it to be where like almost like China with the social credit scores and everything else, and right, and also then eventually UBI, because everybody's sitting at home, you get a basic income, all that jazz. They were trying to push it that way. Well, on the right, you have the same thing. Okay, if you guys haven't looked into post-humanism, I would highly suggest doing it, because post-humanism is sorry, one second here. Yep. I'm going to go ahead and pause that. We're going to so post-humanism is a view that after humans, we're going to have something else, that we're going to basically become immortal. We're going to be other than human. They can edit your genes to make you not sick, to make you run faster, to make you. And these are things that DARPA and the military's already talked about. There's plenty of documents out there on it. So that is the thing, and those people sort of transcend both the left and the right. You have them on both sides, and their main goal is that. Civilization Type 1 is a part of that, and that gets into the Minnesota Future stuff that we've been talking about. I might have time today, and the episode that's coming up after this at 6 with the One Minnesota stuff, that we're going to be possibly having enough time to cover more of the Civilization Type 1. So the civilization type 1 is basically using all the resources on this planet, all the energy on this planet, and so on and so forth. But these people's goals transcend both the left and the right. They get in with both the left and the right. Musk is a transhumanist or post-humanist, and he's admitted that. Okay, robots will replace you, all that jazz. Okay, improving people, the brain implants, the Neuralink, right? And so in order to train those AIs, though, that will be in charge of the systems that they want, and to have that AI governance like they've talked about, you have to have massive data sets to feed in. If you don't have massive data sets, the problem is that you're not going to be able to train your AI fast enough. So I'm going to pause there real quick, and we're going to go ahead and switch on over to the high-tech price adjustments. This will just be for a minute, and then we'll wrap up. Oh, it's not here. Give me 1 second. Okay, I have to go ahead and click on that tab over here. Whoa, here we go.
Grocery stores. Recently, Michigan Representative Rashida Tlaib, in a letter to Kroger CEO, said, "We found big retailers with little regional competition can extract large profits simply by adjusting prices of essential goods like food items. My concern is that these tools will be abused in the pursuit of profit, surging prices on essential goods in areas with fewer and fewer grocery stores." Again, that's what Tlaib said. Hank Winchester has been diving into the story today. I caught up with him a little bit before he went out and shot some of the story, and to find out exactly what he's learning about these concerns. So the deal is this really going on? I mean, what have you found out so far?
What Kroger will say is that absolutely they are not doing dynamic pricing, meaning they are not changing prices on demand or upon need, right? So Kroger flat out denies that.
I'm going to say there's the question of, well, why are we doing the facial recognition?
Well, different stores have used facial recognition and that technology.
I'm just going to pause that there. So we're about done for today. There we go. We're back. So yeah, we're about done for today. But yeah, they are using that. So with the massive data sets, just realize that what Elon Musk is doing is all the government data is going into these AIs, and it's training the AIs on a metadata scale. That AI or AGI will probably be used to help run the government. And the government's been trying to get an AI that's more powerful than China. And the only way to do that is through mass data input. In fact, your data is worth more for these stores and people like that. They can give you free product even because your data is worth more to them to train their AIs and their systems than anything else. Same thing with these apps and everything you do online, okay, is these apps make money off your data and your metadata that you're literally giving them. So just realize that, and realize that they're trying to train you, but you can also train the algorithm as well with how you decide to live. So live free, free range humans. Yeah, live free or die trying. So I'll see everybody back in 10 minutes. That'll be here for the One Minnesota stuff. And you guys have a wonderful